Good evening, all the students. So, continuing with the diabetes discussion. So, today our topic of discussion is the complications of diabetes. Complications of diabetes. Complications of diabetes. It can be classified into two groups. One will be the complications which are relatively acute complications, and second is chronic. Chronic means they develop over months to years. So acute and chronic. Now the acute further have two conditions. One is the diabetic ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis, and second is the non-diabetic hyperosmolar coma known as hyperglycemic hyperosmolar state. While the chronic complications are divided whether they are leading to the small vessel involvement or large vessel involvement. So chronic are classified as microvascular complications and macrovascular complications. Macrovascular. So this microvascular complications include three important ones. These are the neuropathy, nephropathy, and retinopathy. While the macrovascular consists of the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. ASCVD, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, it mainly affect the large and the medium sized vessels. Included in this group are the cardiovascular diseases like coronary artery disease, CVAs, and peripheral vascular disease, peripheral vascular leg disorders. So this is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Now coming to one by one the acute complications of diabetes, that is first one is the diabetic ketoacidosis. So this is the first slide or first part that we have started today, complications. All right. So coming to the first one, that is diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA. So DKA mostly it is related with type 1 diabetes. So this is mostly with type 1 diabetes. Diabetic ketoacidosis, maybe at the diagnosis or maybe during the later course of the disease, because there is a insulin deficiency. What is CVA, cerebrovascular accidents? ASCVD is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Now coming to where does cataract fall? Cataract will fall in non-vascular complications of diabetes. Non-vascular complication of diabetes is the cataract. Now coming to the Second point, that DKA can be seen in few cases of type 2 diabetes. So, few cases of type 2 diabetes. One form of the diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is a patient have ketosis, but it is a type 2 diabetes. This diabetes is known as ketosis prone diabetes. KPD. This is known as the ketosis prone diabetes, and these patients, they will initially require the insulin, and after later on they can do manage well on the OHs. And this diabetes is also known as, one exam has asked about the ketosis prone diabetes, that is a type of a type 2 diabetes. This is also known as flat bush diabetes. Flatbush diabetes, ketosis prone diabetes. So this second cause of the type 2 diabetes is, it can be due to SGLT2 inhibitors. This can be due to the SGLT2 inhibitors, where it is responsible for, very surprisingly, euglycemic. That means here the sugars levels are normal. Sugar levels are normal. Euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis. And the reason for this is because of the SGLT2. There is this is a direct effect of the SGLT2 inhibitor, that they stimulate the glucagon release. They stimulate the glucagon release. At the same time, by controlling the sugars, they are decreasing the insulin levels also. They are decreasing the insulin levels. So SGLT2 inhibitors, there are two proposed mechanisms why they cause the ketoacidosis. First is, they directly stimulate glucagon, and second, they decrease the insulin levels by controlling the sugars. This was the first lecture. The glucose, whenever glucose levels are increased, insulin is released, and when glucose levels are reduced, insulin level will reduce. So this happens in cases of the SGLT2 inhibitors. Now coming to the pathogenesis of ketoacidosis. Pathogenesis. So the most important pathogenesis is altered insulin and glucagon ratio. Insulin, glucagon and insulin ratio, that is the reason for the ketoacidosis. This is the reason for the ketoacidosis. Why euglycemic? Because SGLT2 inhibitor are being given. And what is SGLT? These are the glucose lowering medications. They leads to the glucose excretion through the urine, and when glucose levels are reduced from the blood, the insulin stimulus is reduced and insulin level will reduce. So pathogenesis is basically the most important point is altered insulin and glucagon ratio. Altered. So altered ratio is that insulin levels are reduced and glucagon levels are increased. So the insulin levels are reduced and glucagon levels are increased. They are increased. Now, there is the mechanism of the insulin. Let's see how it work in relation to the keto acids. Keto acids, how does it work? So, here is adipose cell. Here is the adipose cell, and in the adipose cell there is lipase, and this lipase activity is mediated by insulin, known as the hormone sensitive lipase or insulin sensitive lipase. So there is in the adipose cells insulin, or you can say hormone sensitive lipase. In the adipose cells. Why euglycemic? Because SGLT is diabetic lowering medication. Why DKA mostly occur in type 1 diabetes? We are discussing that pathogenesis, why it occur in the type 1 diabetes. Now, why glucagon is increased? Because of the direct action of the SGLT. And also know that glucagon and insulin are antagonists to each other. If in the body insulin is reduced, glucagon action will increase. And severe deficiency of the insulin occur in type 1 diabetes. Now, coming to ketones present in type 2, we have just discussed ketosis prone diabetes, that is a flatbush diabetes, and if patient is taking SGLT inhibitors, then ketones can be present in type 2 diabetes. Now, this insulin sensitive lipase, the action of this is the storage form of the fat is triglycerides, and this is converted into free fatty acids. This is a function of the lipase, insulin sensitive lipase, triglyceride into the free fatty acid. And what is the normal role of the insulin? Normal role of the insulin, normally insulin inhibit this lipase. This is the first action of the insulin in relation to fatty acid metabolism or fat metabolism. So that means it is making the lipids, it is decreasing the lipolysis. Normally it is decreasing the lipolysis of the fat. Now, what happens if there is a insulin deficiency, severe insulin deficiency? Free fatty acids will increase. Free fatty acids is increased. So, if severe insulin deficiency, so this will lead to increase in free fatty acid release from the adipose cells, increased FF, free fatty acids from the adipocytes. Now, there is severe insulin deficiency leading to the increase in the free fatty acid levels, and these free fatty acid levels they will go to the liver. So here is the liver. Here is the liver. So these free fatty acids they go to the liver. Fatty acids And in the liver, there are two routes. Either they will go into a storage site, that is triglycerides, storage site, or they have a second route, and second route is they can go into the mitochondria to make the ketone bodies. So here is the mitochondria. So these free fatty acids with the help of a shuttle, and the name of this shuttle is the CPT. So with the help of CPT, now the meaning of the CPT is carnitine palmitoyl transferase 1. So this act as a shuttle. This transfer the fatty acids into the mitochondria, and when these fatty acids go into the mitochondria, they will make these fatty acids. They make the acetyl CoA, and acetyl CoA is the substrate for formation of keto acids or ketone bodies, and it will make acetoacetate. Acetoacetate in the mitochondria. So acetoacetate is the ketone body. It is the ketone body, and you must be knowing that ketone body, they are generated in cases of starvation to provide the energy to brain and extrahepatic tissues. Extrahepatic tissue ketone bodies provide the fuel during the starvation conditions. Now this acetoacetate will be converted into two more ketone bodies, and the predominant ketone body is beta hydroxybutyrate. Beta hydroxybutyrate and acetate. Or acetone. So acetoacetate is the ketone body made in the mitochondria, and it converts into the beta hydroxybutyrate and acetate and the acetate. Now this beta hydroxybutyrate acetate is converted periphery into extrahepatic tissue. Acetoacetate again. So it is released into the blood, and it will be circulating at beta hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate, and these are the keto acids. These are the keto acids. These are the keto acid. If there is a triglyceride storage, why don't fatty liver occur in diabetes? Yes, fatty liver occur in diabetes. In diabetes there is a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And what are those fatty livers things? They are triglyceride deposit in the liver. So there is a fatty liver disease. Very good point. Now there is the keto acids will increase if there is more release of beta hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. Now but free fatty acid already stored in the blood as triglyceride. Yes, there is a balance in the storage form as well as going into the keto acid generation by beta oxidation. Beta oxidation is the pathway which leads to the ketone body formation. So this step is beta oxidation step. And yesterday I told you to go to the biochemistry profile and look and revise the ketone body formation, how they are formed. So this homework I gave you yesterday. Now what happens, the role of the glucagon. So the role of the glucagon here is a very important role, that along with the insulin deficiency, glucagon levels are increased in the body. So activity is increased, and this CPT is stimulated by glucagon. Glucagon stimulate the CPT activity. So both these things happen: severe insulin deficiency as well as the elevation of glucagon activity. Now this is the generation of the ketone bodies. Beta hydroxybutyrate, yes, it is formed in the mitochondria also, and it is released into the blood in the form of a keto acids. Yes, indeed all these three things, acetate, acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate, all are made in the mitochondria. All three keto acids formed in the mitochondria. Now this is responsible for the ketoacidosis. Now coming to the clinical manifestations because of these features. So, clinical features. If insulin inhibit lipase, how does it help in lipogenesis? It help in the lipogenesis by making the stores of adipose in the form of triglyceride. If insulin is not working, lipase will work more, and that causes lipolysis. So insulin deficiency causes lipolysis, degradation of triglycerides into the free fatty acids. Now coming to the clinical features, and understand these clinical features, how they develop in a patient of the ketoacidosis. So symptoms. And these will be the clinical case given to you, both in acid based disorders, both in the endocrine also. So symptoms. Symptom is patient will have nausea and vomiting. Reason: because of acidosis. Stimulate the vomiting centers centrally. So stimulate central emesis center directly. Any acidosis have a clinical feature: nausea, vomiting because of central stimulation. Now the second important symptom with which patient can present, and that will cause a confusion whether patient has pancreatitis or any abdominal pathology. So the second important symptom is abdominal pain. So the causes of the abdomen pain is multiple reasons. First reason is hyperglycemia. It leads to a decrease gastric motility. Hyperglycemia, gastric motility is reduced, as well as because of the effect of glucagon. gastric motility is reduced. The action of the glucagon is also act on the GIT, reduces the motility, and when gastric motility is reduced, there is a stomach distension, and stomach distension cause abdominal pain. Second cause is it is because of the stretching of hepatic capsule. Liver capsule, because of the sudden accumulation of free fatty acids in a liver. Sudden influx of the free fatty acid, they distend the liver capsule. They will distend the liver capsule, and patient will have abdominal pain. And this is a very, very important point, because this abdominal pain can mimic appendicitis, that can mimic the acute peptic ulcer, or it can mimic the pancreatitis. So abdominal pain, important symptom in these patients. Now the third feature, important third feature will be, obviously it is related to the osmotic diuresis, and because of the osmotic diuresis, patient will have features of the increased thirst and polyuria. Osmotic diuresis. Then patient will have a sense of uncomfortable breathing. So there will be shortness of breath, and shortness of breath is because of the metabolic acidosis. Metabolic acidosis. Patient will feel air hunger. Patient will feel air hunger, shortness of breath. But why it is causing the shortness of the breath? Reason is because of the metabolic acidosis, there is a compensatory stimulation of respiratory centers to excrete CO2 from the lungs, and CO2 is acid. So remember, this is a compensatory phenomena. Because of the blood acidosis, body wants to neutralize the pH. So how it will neutralize the pH? By removing some acid from the body, and one of the acid in the body is carbon dioxide. So that will be excreted more and more from the lungs, and there will be, yes, this will be told by the patient relative that there is a fruity smell. From the mouth, and this fruity smell from the mouth is because of acetone. And how acetone is produced? From acetate. So acetone, fruity smell will be there. From the mouth, as told by the relatives. Now coming to the signs of diabetic ketoacidosis. So signs will be, why not alkalosis? The primary process is the generation of ketoacids. So remember, primary disease will manifest itself. This is a compensatory mechanism, but primary is the accumulation of ketoacids in the body. So the patient will have signs of tachycardia, this is due to hypovolemia induced stimulation of sympathetic activity. Hypovolemia induced stimulation of the sympathetic activity leads to the tachycardia. Now, the next important sign is the Kussmaul breathing. Again, this is because of the stimulation of respiratory centers. Stimulation of the respiratory centers because of the acidosis. The meaning of the Kussmaul breathing is patient will have increase rate of breathing plus increase depth of breathing. This is a Kussmaul breathing. Why hypovolemia? Because of osmotic diuresis. There is a hypovolemia. Now, the depth means patient will tidal volume will increase. Patient will take a deep breath like this. Depth. Tidal volume is increased and rate is per minute. Breathing rate is increased. So that is a Kussmaul breathing. Now, patient will have the features of dehydration, and the features of dehydration will be dry mucous membrane, and dry axilla. Remember, mucous membrane will be dry and axilla will be dry, and this is because of the dehydration. And of course, there will be same thing that there will be abdominal tenderness, due to gastric distension plus hepatic distension. Gastric and hepatic distension will be there, so there will be abdominal tenderness. Now, coming to the precipitating, so these are the clinical feature, and in the clinical features some precipitating events will be given, because there should be some reason why this ketoacidosis is developing. So the most important precipitating factor is in Indian scenario, it is the non-compliance with insulin. Patient has skipped the insulin, so it will develop. So first one is non-compliance with insulin. Then other precipitating cause is any stress in the body, like infection, or it can be precipitated because of the drug, and very important drug is cocaine use. So cocaine will precipitate the diabetic ketoacidosis in these patients. Hyperventilation and Kussmaul together. Kussmaul is a type of hyperventilation. Why osmotic diuresis? Because of hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia means glucose is released from the kidney, along with that water will also be released. So there is polyuria. So non-compliance with the insulin, this is the most common precipitating cause. Any infection increasing the stress in the body, and the cocaine use will lead to the precipitating factor for diabetic ketoacidosis. Now, coming to the investigations of diabetic ketoacidosis. Investigation. So in the investigation, first we will see the diagnostic criteria for diabetic ketoacidosis. Compliance patient, non-compliance with insulin, patient is not taking insulin, so in type 1 diabetes, so that will precipitate the diabetic ketoacidosis. Non-compliance means not taking the medicine as prescribed. Now coming to how shortness of breath, remember shortness of breath is a patient terminology. It is a patient terminology that patient is feeling the dyspnea. So now come to the essential for diagnosis in diabetic ketoacidosis, the investigation DKA. These are the essential of diagnosis. For diabetic ketoacidosis. So how cocaine will use? Cocaine will cause sympathetic stimulation, and sympathetic stimulation lead to anti-insulin and pro-glucagon activity, sympathetic activity, and that is also the reason for any infection, for any stress to cause the diabetic ketoacidosis. So sympathetic overactivity is anti-insulin and pro-glucagon like effects. Now essential of diagnosis for diabetic ketoacidosis, D stand for diabetes. So diabetes means there will be the plasma glucose value will be more than 250 milligram per deciliter, plasma glucose values in the diabetes word. Then K stand for keto acids. So remember, very important, urine ketones are not the essential of diagnosis. It is the serum ketones which are elevated. So serum ketones elevated, and main serum ketone we take is beta hydroxybutyrate. That is the main ketone that we will assess, beta hydroxybutyrate. A stand for acidosis. That means the blood pH or arterial pH less than 7.3. It is less than 7.3. Random plasma glucose, yes, random plasma glucose. So these are the essential of diagnosis, and they define the DKA. And why not urine ketones are essential in the diagnosis? So the problem with, though we go for the urine ketones, so urine ketones detect acetoacetate, not beta hydroxybutyrate, and initially the urinary ketones can be negative, because beta hydroxybutyrate take time to convert into the acetoacetate. So urine ketone detect the acetoacetate, and initially acetoacetate is absent. So urine ketone will be negative in initial 12 hours of presentation. So initially it will be negative, because beta hydroxybutyrate will take time to convert into acetoacetate in the blood. So this will be initially negative, and in the recovery phase acetoacetate remain positive. It remain positive for 12 hours even after recovery. Even after the recovery. So therefore beta hydroxybutyrate, the main ketone is taken and it convert into the blood into acetoacetate. That conversion take time. So initially urine ketone will be negative, and in the recovery phase urine ketone will be falsely positive. Therefore urine ketone is not a reliable test. Hence not reliable. Not reliable. Now coming to the fifth investigation, and important fifth investigation in diabetic ketoacidosis are the electrolyte. Very important points of the electrolyte. First is, so many times this question have come, serum sodium, the concentration of the serum sodium. So what happens, the serum sodium this is blood and this is the cell. So sodium is in the blood. Majority of the sodium is in the blood, and sodium is concentration is in relation to the how much water is present in the blood. So the blood will have more glucose. So the glucose will be there. Why? Even after recovery urine ketones are present. Read this statement. In the recovery phase, acetoacetate remain there in the blood. Beta hydroxybutyrate has gone, but there will be acetoacetate which is remaining in the blood even after recovery. So acetoacetate remain positive even for 12 hours after the recovery. It remains. It is made from beta hydroxybutyrate. So when you do the urine ketone, it will be positive up to 12 hours of recovery. Therefore the test which are doing in your ward, the urine dipstick test, is not a reliable test for the diabetic ketoacidosis patient. It is the serum ketones which is a reliable test. So in the blood or in the urine, remember it will remain there in the blood, and from the blood it is going into the urine. Remain present for 12 hours in blood and urine, then into the urine. Now coming to the effect of glucose on the serum sodium. Acetoacetate is formed first by, it can't detect initially. Remember, it is formed in the mitochondria. And from the mitochondria, inside the mitochondria it is converted into beta hydroxybutyrate, and the main release is of beta hydroxybutyrate. That is the main ketone. And in the blood, beta hydroxybutyrate convert into acetoacetate. So this is the cell, and glucose levels are high in the blood. So come to this diagram, understanding the concept of the sodium effect in high sugars. What happens to the serum sodium? So there is a high sugar in the blood. As a result, what will happen? Blood osmolarity is increased. So there will be increase osmolarity of the blood. So the water from the cells will come here. So there will be more water which is coming into the blood, and what will this water will do in the blood? This will lead to excess of the water which is coming into the blood will cause dilutional hyponatremia. It will cause a dilutional hyponatremia. It is released into the blood. More water is coming into the blood from the cells, and it causes a dilutional hyponatremia. So serum sodium is the on a lower side. So serum sodium values fall, and that is because of the dilutional hyponatremia. And how this question is asked? This question is asked in a DKA patient. When you give insulin, when you reduce the glucose level, what happens to the serum sodium concentration? Serum sodium concentration will increase. Now, number 6. Number 6 is serum potassium. And serum potassium has a variable effect. It is variable effect. Variable concentration. It can be low because of loss in the urine. It can be high because of deficiency of insulin. So variable means it can be low due to urinary excretion, or it can be high due to insulin deficiency. Because insulin is responsible for causing the potassium entry into the cells. If insulin deficiency is there, potassium will be there. Potassium will be there in the blood. So the serum potassium level will be variable. It will be variable. Now, what about the urinary sodium? The urinary sodium will be, if there is a polyuria, it will be increased. It will be slightly increased. Yes. Serum sodium increase? No. I never told that serum sodium is increased. Serum sodium is reduced. Look at the arrow. This downward going arrow means low sodium. And when we will go for the arterial blood gas analysis, the pH will be low, which we have discussed above. pH will be low, and because of the compensatory mechanism, there will be PaCO2 low, and bicarbonate stores will be reduced. Serum bicarb will be low. Now, coming to, so these will be the arterial blood gas analysis parameters. pH is reduced, bicarbonate will be reduced because it acts as a buffer and it is consumed in neutralizing those acids. So this will be the arterial blood gas parameters, and anion gap will be increased. Anion gap you will be reading in the arterial blood gas analysis section. So anion gap is increased. Anion gap. How CO2 is low? We have done above because of the compensatory hyperventilation. Compensatory hyperventilation. Now, what is arterial blood gas analysis? That you will be discussing in your respiratory classes in details. Now coming to the treatment or management of the diabetic ketoacidosis, and number 3 were the essential of diagnosis with which we prove the diagnosis of diabetic ketoacidosis. So coming to the treatment section. So the treatment of diabetic ketoacidosis, number 1 is number 1 fluid replacement. Because the main cause of death in these patients is the hypovolemia. Main cause of the death is hypovolemia. Serum sodium will increase on giving insulin, yes, because if you give insulin, glucose will be reduced and that shift of water will reduce, so automatically serum sodium concentration will increase. Now coming to the fluid replacement. We start with the fluid of choice is normal saline or isotonic saline. So we start with normal saline. Normal saline is 0.9% saline. NS, that is known as the NS. Now this NS, it is given within first 3 hours at a very high rate. So this rate is 2 to 3 liters in first 1 to 3 hours. Reason being, the total fluid deficit in the body (5 to 6 liters). So the total fluid deficit in the body is 5 to 6 liters. And polyuria and dilutional hyponatremia together, how? For that you have to understand the physiology. Remember, where is the maximum water of our body located? Is it intracellular, extracellular, is it in interstitium, or it is in plasma? So you can understand the concept like this. In cases of diabetic ketoacidosis, main dehydration is intracellular dehydration. The water from the cells is going into the extracellular compartment. So there is a intracellular dehydration. Total fluid deficit in the body is 5 to 6 liters. Now coming to the patient will be given the normal saline, and normal saline is given as 2 to 3 liters in the first 1 to 3 hours, and subsequently it is changed to 0.45 half normal saline. Half normal saline is 0.45%. And the rate of this is a continuous rate of the half normal saline, and it is given as 250 to 500 ml per hour. So we shift it to half normal saline. And why it is shifted after the initial dose? Reason is the normal saline contain more chloride. So if we continuously keep on giving the normal saline, hyperchloremia can occur. So to prevent, why this is given? To prevent hyperchloremia which can occur with increase quantity of normal saline. Normal saline contain 154 milliequivalent per liter of chloride. So hyperchloremia will be a dangerous phenomena here, and in acid base you will be reading that hyperchloremia can cause acidosis. It can cause acidosis, hyperchloremia. You will be reading in the acid base disorders. So we do not want to give high quantity of normal saline to prevent the hyperchloremia. Reason being, the chloride concentration in normal saline is highest among all the IV fluid which you are giving, like saline or half normal saline, Ringer lactate. So chloride is very high. Chloride is very high. So therefore we change it to the half normal saline, and the rate of the half normal saline is 250 to 500 ml per hour. This we will then go to the third step. So before the third step, the second treatment which is started almost simultaneously with these patient is the insulin, because there is a insulin deficiency. We want to correct that insulin deficiency. So the third point we will come after the insulin. Number 2 is insulin. What is the main cause of death in the hypovolemia? The main cause of the death is the cell damage, especially cardiac cell damage. Cardiac cell damage. So cardiac arrest can happen. So this is the main cause of the hypovolemia. So in the insulin, we will give short-acting insulin. Intravenous, and the dose is 0.1 unit per kg body weight. Stat. So we will give a short-acting insulin intravenous, 0.1 unit per kg body weight. Stat. Why we are giving intravenous? Because subcutaneous absorption may not be that fast and may not be that predictable. So we give IV only, and followed by that we start the IV infusion of the insulin. IV infusion, and infusion rate is 0.1 units per kg per hour. Continuous continuous insulin infusion with the short acting insulin. So stat means immediately. That is the meaning of stat, and it is followed by the IV infusion. So what will be the expected result? The expected result will be the glucose values will start reducing. So what we do, if glucose levels are around 250, so when glucose reaches plasma glucose 250 milligram per deciliter, we start dextrose infusion also. When the plasma glucose of 250 is achieved. So start dextrose infusion. Why this dextrose infusion is started when the plasma glucose is reduced to the 250 levels? This is to prevent the starvation ketoacidosis. Starvation ketoacidosis can also occur when glucose levels fall. So to prevent starvation ketoacidosis. So as soon as sugar levels are 250, you have to give the glucose. You have to give the glucose to the patient, so to prevent the starvation ketoacidosis. Starvation ketoacidosis. Now, how much of dextrose is given? The dextrose is given as 5% dextrose. 5% dextrose it is given. 5% is 5 gram in 100 ml. 5 gram in 100 ml, and it is given as 150 to 250 ml per hour infusion rate. 150 to 250 ml of per hour of infusion rate. 5% dextrose, not 25%. Not 25%. What is the difference between stat and bolus? It is synonym. It is synonym. So this is the quantity of the dextrose that we will be starting, and along with that the half normal saline will continue. Half normal saline will continue. Now coming to the number third and important one is the potassium replacement. So the potassium replacement, reason is we are giving insulin and we will expect the potassium to go inside the cell once we start with the insulin therapy. So remember, basic point, as we are giving insulin, so after insulin intracellular shift of potassium occur. Intracellular shift of the potassium can occur. So with that, the important potassium replacement will depend on the potassium levels. So according to serum potassium values, according to the serum potassium value, if the potassium value is more than 5.2, potassium value, if it is more than 5.2, no replacement needed. The glucose will trigger ketoacidosis? No. Simultaneously you are giving the insulin simultaneously, so that will neutralize the glucose. So this will not cause the ketoacidosis. We have to provide patient fuel in the form of glucose to prevent the starvation ketoacidosis. Now if the plasma glucose is between 3.5 to 5.2, in that case we will replace the potassium as KCl infusion will be given. 10 millimoles per hour. 10 millimoles per hour will be the KCl infusion rate if the potassium, even if it is a normal range, 3.5 to 5.2 is almost a normal range. Why? Because we will be giving insulin and we will expect that hypokalemia can occur. Now if the potassium is less than 3.5, so in that case we will give potassium chloride infusion 40 to 80 millimoles per hour. Millimoles per hour. So this is the important protocol for the potassium replacement in cases of diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis. So number 4 is, because there is a acidosis, exogenous bicarbonate replacement. So we will think of that we should give a bicarb from outside because it is a acidosis process, but guideline says avoid this agent. So this should be avoided. The bicarbonate replacement, soda bicarb or bicarb replacement. So this should be avoided in the patient. This should be avoided in the patient. So why this is avoided in the patient? Reason is, with IV fluids, we are giving the IV fluids. And what will IV fluid do? IV fluid will bring the acetoacetate beta hydroxybutyrate moves into liver, where these are converted into bicarbonate. So we are flushing those keto acids. We are flushing those keto acids, acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate, and they will go into the liver. Of course, they can go into the kidneys also. So some portion is into the kidney. So kidney, liver and kidney, where they will be converted into bicarbonate. So body has potential bicarbonate in the form of these acetoacetate, beta hydroxybutyrate. So they will be converted. They will be providing the bicarbonate to the body. So if you give external bicarb, patient will end up into alkalosis. Patient will have alkalosis. So therefore, these exogenous bicarbonate should be avoided. And when they are given, indication is if the blood pH is severely reduced. If the pH is less than 7. When it is severely low, severe acidosis, we will give the exogenous bicarbonate. So the sodium bicarbonate is given here. Sodium bicarbonate. It is given as 50 millimoles per liter in 200 ml of sterile water per hour until pH more than 7. So this is the dose of the soda bicarbonate. Soda bicarbonate, it is given until the pH, blood pH is more than 7. Blood pH is more than 7. So this is the indication of giving the bicarbonate therapy in cases of a diabetic ketoacidosis patient. And equally important is the monitoring. Monitoring is very important. Monitoring of blood pressure, monitoring of the glucose, monitoring of the electrolytes. monitoring of the electrolytes. So these are very very important. Yes, ketone bodies are not utilized by the body. This is not utilization because the liver does not have enzyme to take the fuel from the keto bodies. So this is true. Liver does not have enzyme to convert these ketone bodies into the acetyl CoA and the fuel metabolism. So these are converted into bicarbonate. These are converted into bicarbonate, which is not the fuel pathway. Which is not the fuel pathway. Now coming to the monitoring, very very important is number 5, monitoring. So the monitoring of the blood pressure is done. Blood pressure, and blood pressure is monitored every 2 to 4 hours. Glucose values, plasma glucose, it is monitored every 1 to 2 hours. Potassium values for hourly. So monitoring of the blood pressure, glucose values, the plasma glucose values, and the potassium, on the basis of which the further management is decided. How to check the blood pH bedside? With arterial blood gas analysis. Now, so this is the treatment, and as soon as patients start accepting orally, shift to the subcutaneous insulin. To the subcutaneous insulin. So this is the management, and DKA is a very very important topic. Everything from management, pathophysiology, biochemistry link are asked in your exams. So today the class will be extended, and it will be extended till maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock, because we have to complete the syllabus for complication of diabetes. So remember, it will be a extended class for today. So here we will take 2 minutes of break for streaming purpose. All right, so coming back to the second acute complication, and second acute complication is the non-ketotic hyperosmolar coma, or we can say hyperglycemic hyperosmolar state. The pathogenesis of this condition, HHS, the main pathogenesis is combination of two things. There is a insulin deficiency, which is not so severe as ketoacidosis, plus there is a decrease oral intake by the patient. So what and this take place over the weeks. It is not 2 or 3 days event. DKA is more acute. 2 to 3 days it will present. If patient stop insulin, 2 or 3 days patient will present as DKA. But in this condition there will be a 2 or 3 weeks history that patient was not able to take orally, and there was a insulin deficiency over a period of over 2 to 3 weeks. This will lead to severe hyperglycemia, severe hyperglycemia. Why this hyperglycemia is more than the DKA? Reason, because this hyperglycemia develop over 2 to 3 weeks, so such a long duration. So the glucose level keep on increasing day by day. Severe hyperglycemia, and patient has decreased oral intake, so there will be severe dehydration. So severe hyperglycemia will take place, and this will lead to severe volume depletion. Severe volume depletion, and patient is not taking oral intake, so there will be severe dehydration. Severe dehydration, and because of this severe dehydration, patient usually have CNS symptoms. So here the patient will have CNS symptoms. So this is the pathogenesis. This is the pathogenesis. Decrease oral intake of food, decrease intake of water. This is the history of a patient. Patient is bedridden. Patient is bedridden in these cases. So was not taking care of himself or herself. So it develops over a long period of time. Therefore, the sugar values are very, very high. They keep on accumulating per day. Severe hyperglycemia, volume depletion, dehydration leading to CNS symptoms, CNS symptoms. So this will be the pathogenesis, and here the ketone bodies are not present. Ketoacidosis is not present in these conditions, ketone bodies. Now coming to the symptoms of these patients. So basically the clinical feature of this is patient will be elderly patient. This is a clinical history will be given to you, and patient will have history of decreased oral intake. Along with that, polyuria, and patient will have the symptom of altered sensorium. So there will be altered sensorium, and in the clinical history, history of elderly will be there. History of elderly. So this will be the main symptom of the patient. Why decrease oral intake? Because decrease oral intake, patient has some underlying precipitating cause, because of which patient was not taking care of herself. There was no one with the patient. Patient was alone, bedridden. Now in the symptoms, what will be absent? Absent will be, there will not be any vomiting symptoms. There will not be any abdominal pain, which were present in the diabetic ketoacidosis condition. So vomiting and abdominal pain. Now the sign. So in the clinical sign, So the clinical sign of the patient will be tachycardia, because of hypovolemia. There will be dehydration signs, and the sign characteristically will be the CNS sign, altered sensorium. Altered sensorium. So mainly HHS affect the brain. Mainly it affects the brain along with the signs of the hypovolemia. Along with the hypovolemia, and the sign which will be absent is Kussmaul breathing. Kussmaul breathing will not be there because there is no acidosis in this condition. In the investigation section, and of course the precipitating causes, like we have done. So the precipitating causes in this condition is, which have led to the decreased oral intake, is patient was having the infection, patient was having stroke, or patient was bedridden due to some orthopedic conditions, or maybe bone fractures, any reason which makes the patient bedridden, not taking care of himself or herself. These are the precipitating causes. Now the investigations. So in the investigations, number 1 is the plasma glucose. In this condition, it is more than 600. More than 600. So more than 600 will be the value, while the plasma glucose in DKA was more than 250. And second investigation that we will do here is number 2, the plasma osmolality. So because of the high glucose values, plasma osmolality will be increased. It will be increased, and the plasma osmolarity here is more than 320 millimoles per liter. It will be raised. Because why plasma osmolality is increased? Because it is a combination of glucose, sodium, and blood urea nitrogen. So therefore it will be increased. So plasma osmolality is twice of sodium plus glucose plus blood urea nitrogen. So you add these three, this will be the formula for plasma osmolarity. So glucose is severely increased, leading to more than 320 of the plasma osmolarity. Now number 3. Negative investigations. Negative investigations is the blood pH. Serum ketones and serum bicarb. So the blood pH here will be more than 7.3. There is no acidosis. Serum ketones are absent, while the serum bicarbonate values will be in a normal range. So it will be normal. So these 3 points in the investigation will differentiate it from the diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis. So these are the investigation which help us in making a diagnosis of hyperosmolar state, because the plasma osmolarity is increased. Plasma osmolarity is increased. Now, the treatment of this condition: total fluid deficit is 9 to 10 liters. The total fluid deficit here is 9 to 10 liters. 9 to 10 liters. So there will be IV fluids. So here the mainstay will be the IV fluid, because that is the most common cause of that. Dehydration or hypovolemia is the most common cause of death in these patients. So IV fluids will be given. Same, we will start with normal saline. And the normal saline is given as 1 to 3 liters over 3 hours. So this is almost the same dose. This is almost the same dose as was given in the DKA, and then we will shift the patient to half normal saline. And this will be given as an infusion of 2 to 300 ml per hour. Ml per hour. And same thing, when the blood glucose is around 250, add 5% dextrose. So the IV fluid is almost the same protocol that we have seen in the diabetic ketoacidosis. Diabetic ketoacidosis. Only thing is कि we are giving this IV fluid for a long period of time, because the deficit is 9 to 10 liters. 9 to 10 liters. So this is given over a period of 2 days. 2 days to replace this deficit of 9 to 10 liters. So IV fluids: first normal saline, followed by half normal saline, and when the plasma glucose reaches 250, we will add the 5% dextrose. Now the insulin. So insulin is given short acting insulin, IV stat. This is given IV stat. So IV stat is given as 0.1 units per kg body weight stat. Followed by infusion per hour. So the treatment here is almost same. Two mainstay of treatment are here. First is the volume depletion, and second is the insulin therapy. So the main role here is the IV fluids. Main role stay here is the IV fluids for these patients. Now coming to, so these are the main two treatment of the hyperglycemic hyperosmolar state. Now, if we summarize, what is the difference between DKA and the hyperosmolar state? So, the difference in summary. DKA and HHS. So if we summarize these, so the summary is: number one, pathogenesis. It is because of altered insulin to glucagon ratio. Here it is a severe insulin deficiency with excess of glucagon action. While here is, it is a moderate insulin deficiency with decreased oral intake. So the insulin deficiency is not as severe as DKA. Therefore, ketone bodies are not made. Here, the glucagon action is not that high, leading to the ketone body formation. So this is the pathology difference. So there is a altered insulin to glucagon ratio. There is a severe deficiency of insulin, and there is increased action of glucagon. So remember, for DKA, ratio is important. Now about the clinical features. Typical case, typically type 1 diabetes, and typically it is type 2 diabetes, elderly patient. While the features of in the clinical feature: nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, present, absent. So you summarize the list. You will be getting a clinical case, and they may not give you type 1 or type 2 patients. So then you focus on the clinical features. Ki what are the clinical features given? So you do a proper appropriate management of that condition. So nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, if they present, it will favor DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. While if they are absent, then it is HSS. While in the clinical sign, Kussmaul breathing, present, absent. Now then they will give you some investigations. So in the investigation, only the important one which differentiate these two conditions. So we will take them head to head comparison, the difference. First will be plasma glucose. So the plasma glucose value more than 250, and here typically it is more than 600. While the plasma osmolality, here it is not that elevated. It is 300 to 320, and characteristically in a hyperosmolar word, look at the middle word, hyperosmolar. So there will be more than 320. serum ketones present, absent. They can be elevated if starvation ketoacidosis, starvation ketoacidosis, serum ketones. And important difference is the arterial pH. Head to head comparison, less than 7.3, more than 7.3. Exactly different values will help us in identifying which acute complication we are dealing with. So these are the differences between the acute complications of the diabetes. Now coming to the chronic complications. So come to the chronic complications of diabetes, and the very important section is the mechanism of action for these chronic complications, especially the microvascular complications. And these microvascular complications are relatively specific for diabetes. Macrovascular complication can have other reasons, but these microvascular, they are related to the diabetes. So the mechanism of the chronic complications. Number one is important terminology. That terminology is known as age products. Chronic complication. Age product is advanced glycosylation and product. Advanced glycosylation and products. So this is the first mechanism of damage. And how does these age product do the damage? What is the age product? Age product are nothing but they are the glucose derived precursors. So age products are glucose derived precursors, and the most important of this precursor is methyl glyoxal. So this is the most important damaging product of chronic hyperglycemia. Glucose derived product precursor, and that is known as the advanced glycosylation and product. So what these do, these end product have their receptors. So the mechanism of damage is bind on receptor of age product, and that is known as RAGE. This is receptor for age product. It bind on the RAGE. And where is this receptor present? It is present on the inflammatory cells, like so. This receptor is on macrophage and T cells. Macrophage and the T cells, and this leads to the release of cytokine that is known as TGF beta. Transforming growth factor. Now correlate. Some of you have done the ophtha, you have done the third year ophthalmology. There is a diabetic complication known as diabetic retinopathy. Now try to make the link. Some of you have done the kidney nephropathy, diabetic nephropathy. Now these are the complications, so try to make link ki what are the mediators. So TGF beta, what it does, it leads to the increase basement membrane thickening. Wherever there is a basement membrane in the glomeruli. Now recall back kidney pathology, Robbins, basement, glomerular basement membrane thickening link, and as well as this TGF beta releases VEGF, that is vascular endothelial growth factor. And this is the growth factor. Eyes, retina, leads to dilated arteries, rupture of the arteries, causes retinopathy. So here now we come to the clinical point. Basement membrane thickening, that is diabetic nephropathy. VEGF, it is implicated for diabetic retinopathy. Implicated for the diabetic retinopathy. VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factors. It is made from or help from the TGF beta. TGF beta will be the molecule which leads to these effects. Yes, neovascularization, very good. Neovascularization in the retinopathy. Endothelial growth means neovascularization, and basement membrane thickening, glomerulosclerosis, you will be reading in the diabetic nephropathy. So it is started by the age product. Now the other effect of the age product is it binds with matrix protein of vascular smooth muscle. Make it stiff. So it interact with the proteins. It interact with the proteins collagen of the vascular smooth muscle cells. Vascular smooth muscles. It make the blood vessels stiff, and the blood vessel becomes stiff. There is a shear hydraulic pressure which causes endothelial damage. And endothelial damage means thrombus formation. Thrombus formation in the blood vessels. So it binds with the proteins of vascular smooth muscles. They make the vascular smooth muscles stiff, and when blood will flow with the pressure, it will damage the endothelium lining, and whenever endothelium is damaged, thrombus is formed. Platelet thrombus is formed, and that lead to the macrovascular complications like the coronary artery disease, like stroke. It can lead to. So remember, the number one product which is responsible here is the age products. Age products are the main culprit. And now the second mechanism of action is through the production of sorbitol from the glucose. So number two is the pathway which is the glucose converted into sorbitol. Glucose converted into the sorbitol with the help of aldose reductase. And this reaction uses now link with the biochemistry, link with the physiology. Glucose is converted into sorbitol with the help of aldose reductase, and this reaction utilizes the NADPH, and this will lead to the NADPH will be used here, and it can become deficient. So as a result, so this will be the oxidized glutathione is converted into reduced glutathione with NADPH. The reaction, biochemistry reaction. So this need the NADPH. So if the NADPH is used in that aldose reductase pathway, so what will happen? Antioxidant deficiency will be there. Because the NADPH will be going into the aldose reductase pathway. As a result, reduced glutathione deficiency occur, and this deficiency leads to the oxidative damage throughout the body. Oxidative damage. So glucose converted into sorbitol with aldose reductase, and this pathway uses the NADPH, which should have been there in a antioxidant pathway. So antioxidant pathway will be less and deficiency will cause oxidative damage. And for supplement, read the chapter 2 of Robbins, cell injury, Robbins 2, chapter 2. So these are the two important mechanisms of chronic complications of diabetes, chronic complications of diabetes. So here we will finish with the class, and tomorrow we will then finalize the remaining topics, because I think there is one more class after this class. So therefore tomorrow we will do the chronic complications of the diabetes, and whatever is remaining we will try to cover in tomorrow's class. Yes, this is a polyol pathway. This is known as the polyol pathway. So remember, you revise your biochemistry also, because if you read biochemistry without medicine, it will be a tough. But if you first read the medicine, correlate the patient, and then do the biochemistry, you will be able to understand the biochemistry. I have taken some superficial points from the biochemistry here. So tomorrow we will do the microvascular complications and macrovascular complications of diabetes. 7 to 9 will be our time schedule.